Is welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy. Okay. So I am live on, I just completely just went brain, whatever. The thought just flew away on Facebook and YouTube. Before I start, I want to say this about YouTube, and I have to keep reminding people I am not on YouTube because I am trying to be a content creator or gain followers or earn revenue on Facebook. I am sharing this because I don't need people's tips, but I am going to offer a tip. And that tip is if you have an international audience, or let's just say you know that you have people that you connect with in different languages, and you want to translate without having to use a third party platform to translate, use YouTube. I think there's like 200 languages that you can translate the captions into. And if you want to use the audio voice translator, you can also do that. All right. So, with that being said, that is the only reason that I use YouTube is because it allows me to translate an English video into other languages without me having to pay for it. All right. So, there's that. And if you're watching this later, all you have to do to get to the translate is go to your captions and then select your language of choice. I'm going to try to actually make this quick because I'm boiling water. So what I want to talk about is this. First, let me give you the story and then we'll just kind of jump into it because it's unfortunate that people need to be reminded. In the descriptions I placed on both of these, I basically say no country is perfect, right? People can watch people move to or listen to people move to another country and then have this assumption that you're going to have the same experience that another person had when they moved to that country, right? We can look at whether we're moving for the weather, for the economy, for politics, for medical, for whatever the reason may be. That thing that tickles your fancy, that causes you to maybe start researching another country, may not be worth the trade-off that you're going to give up for making the relocation. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be another country. It can be another state, right? So I'm going to use parks and libraries as examples in this scenario, but I could probably do a list of 50. Hi, my name is Courtney. I have lived in over 10 different states in the United States, and then now I'm living here in Brazil. No, I am not in the military. No, I was not chasing a man, and no, I was not relocated because of a job. And when I say lived, that means I just got a whimsy and was like, I want to live somewhere else, and ended up in a new place. And that means actually living there, not just passing through or visiting for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So I love parks. I love being outdoors. I enjoy libraries. And if anyone is on Facebook and you're watching this, we have actually had a whole, I think, session, 7-day session that was, parks was a big topic when we were talking about it. Parks, we started talking about like how parks have saved so many different people's lives, whether you were in transition, unhoused, abused, whatever it may be. You have gone to a park to gather your thoughts, to maybe just swing on a swing, to release some energy, and how important parks are to many different people. The same for libraries, right? As a child in grade school, we would catch the bus to the library downtown, or not downtown, but Central Phoenix, and spend evenings, hours in the library. As an adult, I've spent many hours in libraries, not studying for a degree or anything of that nature, just like being in a library. And as many of you know, many unhoused people, especially in places where there's like extreme, well, I guess that's everywhere now, but at places where there's like extreme heat and, extreme cold, many libraries are the place where people can come out of the elements and warm up or cool down, but also research. and when I say research, I don't mean like for academic studies, maybe researching to find resources to get housing or locate a family member or whatever it may be. Libraries are important. They have always been important to me. So I'm only using these as two examples, but if I needed to make a long list, I probably could. If you're just coming in here and you see me looking up and down, I have Facebook going live here and YouTube down here. So I'm using parks and libraries as an example. So a few days ago, I was in the car with a friend or whatever, and the conversation of how much medical would have cost out of pocket in the United States. And I always get, no matter whatever the topic is this, oh my God, that we would never do that here, or that's not like that here. And often I'll watch a YouTube video or listen to a podcast or something, and people want to shit on American medical and insurance. Let's just keep the topic on insurance specifically. Let's just not even just talk about medical, because that gets complicated or whatever, right? And then people will hear free health care, and then I don't know what people think that actually means, right? Like free health care in terms of, like, I don't know. Free is not always immediate, and free doesn't necessarily mean that you're not getting, I won't say the best care, but the care that you have expectation for or whatever, right? So with that being said, we're back to the Uber, right? And so they're going on and like, oh, so this place is better than that place because we don't have to deal with that when it comes to insurance. We don't have to deal with that when it comes to lunch for public schools or whatever the thing was or whatever. There's always this comparison about how horrible the United States is. I'm not here to argue that, but I will remind people I didn't leave the United States because I thought the United States was horrible. I had amazing experiences that most people will never experience anywhere they go. And I'll talk about that more, and I've already talked about it before, but so many people have this thing about, oh, in the United States, I was stressed and I was working all the time. In the United States, capitalism, in the United States, this, in the United States is that. Reminder, or allow me to introduce or reintroduce myself. I walked away from the rat race many years ago intentionally, and I designed the life that I wanted to live that has allowed me in the United States to have a life. Hey, Bernadette, they do. Okay, I'm glad you're here because I'm talking about parks and libraries. And I got a confirmation about a library today from another PhD student, right? And I just really want to remind people, like, don't even spend your time in your inner sovereign thinkers. People, if you are not a sovereign thinker, let's just put it that way. Okay, if you are not a sovereign thinker, you don't need to be relocating, especially to another country, because the amount of time and money that most people spend researching another country, you're probably going to hate it when you get there, or you're just not going to be built for a different environment that you're used to. No matter how much you say, you're going to hate it because you're not going to be capable to be able to be uncomfortable with the conveniences that have kept so many people, quote unquote, trapped, or still thinking that you're trapped in this rat race of the United States. And so, Bernadette, as basically I was saying, my life experience as a Black woman in the United States is very different than most people in general. So, for example, a lot of people complain about like the Latin American and just other cultures, right? Where it's like very slow, people show up late, you don't know when the reservist or the repairman is going to show up. It is no fucking different than living in a beach town. When you live in a beach town, most people don't have signs on their doors. Yes, if it's a corporate, establishment or bank or something like that. But I lived by the beach when I lived in New York, 2 stops away from Far Rockaway. I lived across the street from the beach when I lived in West Haven, Connecticut. I lived by the beach when I lived in Daytona Beach. I lived by the beach when I lived in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. And I'm just going to speak specifically about New Smyrna Beach, right? Because I spent most time there or whatever. And I had more people visit me there when I was living in Florida than the other places. But let's just stay on topic. So when I lived at the beach in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, first of all, a lot of people have this idea. First, when I moved to Florida, people were like, oh my God, it's red country and you're going to hate it and it's racist and blah, 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 this. It didn't stop me from going. Okay, I get there. I land in Daytona Beach. And then I was like, I ended up finding this old church, moved to New Smyrna Beach. I didn't know what New Smyrna Beach was. My first question to one of my friends who had been living in Florida, I don't know how long, I was like, what's a New Smyrna Beach? Like, I was like, what is it? And they were like, oh, it's this small town. And then people were always giving me this advice about how I wasn't going to like it because it was this and it was that and it was racist or it was snooty and whatever, a bunch of old people. Let me tell you, when you live in a town with most retirees, they don't really fucking care. Like Tumblr hour is like the best. From 9:30 until about 5 o'clock, people, happy hour starts at 10 o'clock, right? And you see everyone with their tumblers, and it ain't water in their tumblers. They are so unbothered. They are not worried, right? And it's also seasonal. And so when I would have friends come to visit, it's a very slow pace. And so they would say, you know, when they would get out, they would get on the bike and they would start exploring the city or whatever, thinking that they're going to go do yoga or go to a museum or whatever it might be, a restaurant or whatever. They'll come back. They would come back and they would be like, it's not open, but it's 11 o'clock. And I'm like, I tried to tell you, like, and then they find the owner and the owner is like leaving at some weird hour or whatever. And they're just like, oh, I'm going to yoga also. And you're just looking like, but I'm trying to do, it's slow pace. So again, people have this assumption that you can only get a certain lifestyle when you leave the country. No, if anybody's watching this and you've been fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, depending on your experience, to live in a beach town that you can afford and you're not priced out, because I'm not having that discussion with people because I'm a lucky bitch. Like, I don't make a lot of money, but I have been able to live in beach towns and loved it, every minute of it. I quit my corporate job when I was in Connecticut because I lived across the street from the beach and I would have to drive by the people on the beach every day. And I was like, yeah, I'm not getting dressed to go into the office to be tortured. I'm trying to be at the beach in the morning with the old Italian guys playing, what do you call it? Bocce ball, the ball that you toss like you see on the mafia movies, like they literally do that on the beach. But I digress. There are many beaches that people can afford to live by if you actually just believe that it's a possibility. But anyway, any beach town has a slower pace, the same pace that you're going to find. Any rural town, when I was in rural America with my mother, coming from the city, she was coming from Arizona, I was coming from New York, and we both end up in a rural America, not used to city experience. It took us almost 4 years to get used to the pace of talking to people. She and I would be talking to someone about something and it would be that slow drawl. And we would be like, yo, if you don't fucking spit it out already, like, you're gonna drive me fucking crazy. It's that slow pace of rural America, of country America. And this is my gripe with most Americans who get a passport, never seen any other side of the United States, go to another country, and then start touting, oh, how great another country is, and never have experienced more than 1 or 2 cities or states within the United States, right? You live in the country, you live in rural America, and you're trying to get something done. And if you finally hunt them down, perfect example. I was trying to get some wax one day from the guy who owns the beehives and has the honey or whatever, right? Couldn't find him. I go into the store that he takes the honey. I'm hunting him down. And finally someone is like, you can probably go out to so-and-so, drive 20 minutes out of town. He's probably on his tractor, because guess what comes first when you live in that kind of country? Feeding the animals and harvesting your crops. Anything else after that is a hobby. So if their hobby happens to be blacksmithing or selling whatever or honey, that is second. He don't care how much money you have. He don't care. They don't care how bad you need it. when it is time to slaughter, breed, whatever, that is first and foremost. Even the politicians will basically like shut down because it's crop season. Nothing's happening. It's crop season. And so you're going to have to wait. And so I get in the car, I drive to the middle of nowhere, and I can't find this man because no one really knows if he has an address or whatever. And I go into the post office and I'm like, I'm looking for so and so. And they point, oh, there he is right there. Follow the truck. So I hop in my car and there's a slow speed chase. He doesn't even care that I'm following him. I end up in the middle of nowhere in this back room. Long story short, doing kilos and negotiating kilos of beeswax or whatever, right? Because he doesn't care. He's not in any rush. When you find someone that can actually fix your washing machine, your hot water heater, or whatever, guess what's going to happen? They're going to say, oh, I'm behind about 6 months. I'll get to you then. Or, yeah, I can do that. And then you'll say, well, when can you come by? And they will say, I can come by tomorrow. Period. And so most of us are like, first of all, we've already scheduled it. We've used, like other people, the computer, we've scheduled it online. We have, set an appointment. They've sent us a text reminder, a phone call. There's a receptionist. No, they will say, I can come by tomorrow, period. And so just like here in Brazil, you will either get pode ser. It's basically possible. It's possible. Possibly. It's not a yes or a no. It's just our version of maybe. But it's possible that I can come by tomorrow. And then you say, well, what time? Mañana. Like everything is mañana. Does that mean 9? Does that mean 10? Does that mean 12? Mañana. So again, I'm saying all of this to go back to the beginning of no country is perfect. When I left corporate America and started my very first business and registered and the whole thing, the name of that business was Have a Wonderful, one word. The tagline was, the choice is yours. And so many, I even got my car wrapped with that, and I'll have to post a picture later. But so many people thought that was funny. Right? They didn't get it. And now they're still sitting stuck in corporate America. And my whole thing is like, no, the choice is yours to have a wonderful. And people would say, have a wonderful what? See, that's the problem. When you have to then turn around and ask someone to tell you to have a wonderful what, as opposed to thinking sovereignly and pick a fucking thing. Have a wonderful. You might want to have a wonderful, horrible day. How about that? And so many people have a hard time not being told exactly what to do. And I've talked before about how I think we have been conditioned for this. If you have a child right now that is in public school or any type of structured school system or whatever, or preschool specifically, the game Follow the Leader, indoctrinated. How many of you remember that game, Follow the Leader? Not enough people have done any amount of deconditioning to stop thinking. Even if you think that you're doing something different by moving out of the country because someone gives you this ideal picture and has caused you to believe that America is a hellhole, no country, if you've never heard it, let me be the first to tell you, no country is perfect. No state is perfect. No city is perfect. No politician, whatever fraction that you are on or not is perfect, right? And if you don't spend time if you don't have enough experiences that you don't like, you don't even know what you don't like. If you're afraid to fail, failure gives you the opportunity to get a better idea of what you do not like and do not want to experience before you make any long-term commitments or whatever, right? So you can have, I promise you, some of the same experiences in the United States that some people claim can only be had by leaving the United States and moving to a Caribbean island or to Thailand or to Brazil or whatever fucking place that people want to make seem is better than another place. Now, let me jump into the libraries and back to parks specifically. I love the outdoors. Even when I lived in Brooklyn, every place I have lived in the heart of Brooklyn had a backyard. Why? It's not because I went looking for it, because the universe knows that is what is important to me. I thrive when I am able to go outside, right? The last time I went to New York, I did not have a backyard. And that reminded me, I was like, yeah, I can't move back to New York because one, I've always pretty much had a stoop and a backyard. And I was like, I cannot live in New York. I don't care how much I love New York. I don't care how much I love Brooklyn. I will not be able to survive there if I don't have a stoop, my stoop, not a stoop I'm sharing with anyone else, or a backyard, right? So then I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And on top of that, the rent that I've paid in New York to have my own stoops and backyards, access to a backyard, was less than some people pay for a car payment today, right? I am very clear on what is important to me. When I lived in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, I had a huge backyard, amazing oak trees. Like you could, for the plot that the church sat on in New York, they would probably have 50,000 people living in that particular space, right? Parks are important to me. There's no parks here in Salvador, Brazil. People will say, oh, but you have the outdoors and a beach. I was like, since when is putting my feet on sand the same as putting my feet on soil and grass? It's not. It's different. It's nice, but it's not the same. There's no trees at the beach. There are no trees when people say, oh, just go sit on a tree, go hug a tree, go talk. Where the fuck, right? That's not important to some people. And so I was saying to my friend, I was like, who grew up here in Salvador. Well, he grew up on an island, but in Salvador, people in Salvador, when I say to them, how many kids do you know have never put their bare feet on grass? They're shocked when I pose that question to them because there's probably millions. And I know that seems wild and asinine. And I know that there are some people in the United States who could care less about a park, and that's okay. But if parks are something that's important to you, you don't want to be living in the heart of Salvador, Brazil. Now, I lucked out and I have a beautiful place in the countryside. But if I just want to walk out my door right now and go and put my feet on some grass, it ain't happening. There may be some trees, but listen, every tree has been pissed on a million times. I'm not trying to even walk past the tree, let alone sit on the tree if it was actually somewhere, right? So if being in a place where you have access to green space, free, open, green space, Salvador is not the place for you. And now I know some people will be like, well, Salvador and other places and Rio, and I'm not talking about other places because I'll give you an example. I don't like Tampa. I do not like Tampa, Florida. And I'm going to tell you why. I was dating someone who was living in Tampa, who was working in Tampa. And he kept saying, I'm in my car. And I was like, well, why don't you just go to a park? And he was like, he was like, there's no parks. And I was like, what do you mean there's no parks? Like, you idiot. Every place has a fucking park. He's like, no, there's literally no parks. Okay. I had to eat my words because we go. I decide I'm going to go with him for 4 days and spend 4 days with him in Tampa. There's no parks. There are no parks. There were no parks. I think I cried 4 hours into the trip because I had brought my bike from New Smyrna Beach on the back of the car, all the way to Tampa. I was so excited. I was going to ride my bike on the beach like I did in New Smyrna Beach and all the whole, things or whatever. No. And I was determined. I got my bike and I'm biking. I'm on the highway. I'm through neighborhoods. And I was like, okay, I know the ocean is right there. I know there has to be a boardwalk. I know there has to be some place for me to go and ride my bike or walk. No. Access to the beach was the back of people's homes, private, much like you see in California, right? The parks are available, but the way they design the parks are not like in the city center and open to the public where you can go into the park. We found one park, I lie. We found one park that actually had its own parking lot so that anyone could actually just go and park in the park. But it only had like maybe 15 parking spaces. The other parks were in the middle of suburban neighborhoods that were kind of exclusive. So you would have had, and there's no parking. The parking is in people's driveways. So you couldn't just go to the park in the middle of the area and park your car like you normally would at a park. No, you had to either walk a gazillion miles to get to that park or ride your bike or something like that. I was like, I will never fucking live here. Never. One of the things that I do love about, especially like New Smyrna Beach, between, I can say like New Smyrna Beach and Daytona Beach or whatever, right? And let's just go all the way up to Ormond, is you're going to get to some water. You're going to get to some open green space. You can find a place to sit and put a cot up or lean over a bridge to park your car and fish off the side of the road or the highway or whatever. You're going to get access to the beach, right? Those are fucking things that are important to me. Did I look that up when I came here? No, because I wasn't running from something to come to something else. I wasn't looking for a different lifestyle or whatever. Now back to the insurance. Having been here for almost 2 years, now that I know that within the city itself, then let me go back to New York. One of the things that you're going to get in New York, you are going to find a library and you're going to find a park. Even if I have to walk to Battery Park or Central Park or whatever it may be, you're going to find some green space. You are going to find some green space and a library. Guess what you ain't going to find here? And I'm only speaking about Salvador, Brazil, right? I'm not speaking about anything else, but I'm using these as examples for people who want to up and go to another country and then find that it doesn't provide them the lifestyle of the things that are important to them. So if you're like me and you love a library, and not just for myself, but because there's so many different reasons that I'm not going to even get into. And if I have to explain that to you, you're not a person who likes libraries, right? Or parks. But stop listening to everybody. What is important to you? Would not having access to parks it's enough for me to move back to the United States just knowing that people here don't have, teens here, unhoused people here don't have access, don't have libraries, right? And I mean just a basic city neighborhood library, like we are very much aware of. Today, I asked someone who's working on his dissertation and his PhD, and I was like, I've been meaning to ask you, how do you do your studies? Because where's the library? And he just kind of laughed. And he was like, most of it is online, but most of the books, he's at the level now where he has to buy the books that he actually needs for something. But he was like, yeah, it doesn't really exist. And he was saying that as someone, he hadn't thought about it in a while. And when I asked him that, he was like, he actually pulled out his phone and showed me pictures of his favorite library when he used to live in Paris. And I was like, see, that's what the fuck I'm talking about. He gets it. How many people do you know that can pull out their phone and show you a picture of their pictures of their favorite This is somebody that I met randomly on the streets a few days ago or whatever, right? So then I start to tell him about one of my favorite libraries, which is on Yale campus, which is the Beinecke Library. And because they have this big column in the middle of the library where they bring all of these original manuscripts in. But when they find manuscripts across the world, they have bookworms. Bookworms, for those people who don't really fucking care, is an actual thing. And so if you bring an old book in, they don't just immediately put it on the shelf. They put it in a place that's like a cold storage or whatever, but they do it on display at the Beinecke Library. But it also, the way that it glows, because they have this amber slate. And so when the sun sets, it's like this soft, natural, dim, rose, rusty. It's just a beautiful library. But just to know that all these books are in this storage place on, I don't know, it's just magical or whatever, right? So it's the kind of the same when someone is like, oh, I really like being outdoors. I've heard people tell me, oh, I like being outside. And then when I take them outside with me, they just be like, and I'm like, you don't really like outside. You just kind of like walking through the park or whatever, right? Like, I'm not, yeah, no, there's no bugs or whatever. And they just start flinching and shit or whatever. That ain't the kind of outside I'm talking. Now, I'm not outside frogging like Bernadette or whatever, but I'm outside. So what is important to you? Would access to a library as I know it, or knowing that the community has access to a library as I know it, as I had access to, that people who are important to me, to somebody eyes who lights up and pulls out their phone in the middle of the street to show me pictures of his favorite library. And yes, I can't remember the name of the library that he showed me, but it was absolutely beautiful or whatever, right? There's not a place I haven't lived that I've not been into a public library for whatever reason, to see what's happening on the calendar events, hanging out with the elders or the kids or whatever it may be, offering to volunteer, not knowing that people don't have access to that would cause me to go back to the United States, right? You can keep your free medical. You can keep your not having to deal with certain things. That would cause me to go back to the United States. Knowing that there is this is fearful, knowing that there is generations of people who have never stepped their feet on grass. And a lot of people say, well, there's the beach. Okay, y'all, listen. Just like in the United States, not everybody lives near the fucking beach. Not everybody lives on the beach. Some people can't even afford to get to the beach. Some people can't afford, especially here, like where the vendors and they want to charge you for the tents. It ain't like in the US or whatever. You get the vendors and they're going to charge you for a spot, and they're going to charge you for the cooler, and they're going to charge you for the chair, and they're going to charge you for the umbrella. And then they're going to come by and ask you what you want to drink. And then you're going to be charged for that. And then it's all the things. Like, I'm at the beach trying to be unfucking bothered. How about that? Because that's what I'm used to. That's just me. That's my choice. That's my preference. That is what I am fucking used to, right? And so that has nothing to do with being an American or anything like that. When I go to the beach, I don't want to be bothered. So if you want to go to the beach and not be bothered, this ain't the place for you. If you want to go to the beach and be around a whole bunch of people, you may love this. Don't get me wrong. Far Rockaway Beach, that was the day club. But it ain't like here. That I don't mind, because then I'm not having to feel like I have to stand behind a VIP rope just to get a seat at the beach, right? Anybody watching this who's been to the last stop at Far Rockaway Beach, there are people who lived across the street in housing, public housing from Far Rockaway Beach, never went to the beach. Not judging, but what I'm saying is, just like here, there's people who never go to the beach. I don't really go to the beach either here, but I got a pool. I'm not going to the beach because I'm spoiled by New Smyrna Beach. And I know that I'm rambling for a while, but this again is emphasis. I don't care about free healthcare or not having to pay a premium for insurance, or let's just say jump through hoops and which plan and all of fucking that. Because guess what? If I don't have a beach, if I don't have access to green outdoor third spaces that don't cost me the money or force me to open up my pocketbook, that's gonna fucking keep me sick, right? So when I am honoring what feeds my soul, I'm not having to pop pills or go to the doctor all the fucking time. And so I think that's just kind of what I want to say. And those are just two examples. Just two examples. There is no perfect country. There is no perfect president. There is no perfect dictator. There is no perfect city. What is important to you? Last but not least, to my fellow Americans. This is why I said I would leave, because I knew that there were so many Americans who do not appreciate shit. I know that there are some people watching this right now who went to parks to escape abusive parents or abuse or whatever it may be. For some people, they might find that triggering and don't want to go to a park anymore. And I completely understand and I respect that. The same for libraries or whatever, right? However, just like you as a child, just like you as a teenager who went to those places to escape when you didn't have any money, there are millions of other kids, teenagers, and adults who need those spaces just like you fucking needed them. And if you have not fucking volunteered, if you have not fought for those spaces, shame on you. And I have no apologies for that because I've done my time volunteering, fighting for shit. Look, I got my resume and my receipts. But people just sit around and are just complaining about shit that didn't even exist when you were around, but still exists for people who aren't even concerned with that shit, right? So just like now, they're making it illegal for people to be out on the streets or whatever. I hear all of that and I get all of that. But what about the kids who spend from sunup to sundown in a library to avoid going home because they don't have anywhere else to go? Right? Last but not least, one of the other top 3 things that would cause me to go back to the United States that people rarely talk about, and I'm going to talk about that more, is there is no black middle class in Brazil. It doesn't fucking exist. It doesn't exist. There are no HBCUs. So yes, people can say, oh, it's the blackest place and blah, 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 blah. But, and like, there's no black middle class. There's no black middle income communities. There are no historically black colleges. And this is coming from someone who doesn't really care about traditional education, but it's an experience in itself. But it's more of that not being a thing says a lot about a country, right? And I need to also add this. Just because someone says that it's the blackest place, there are a lot. Just go online if you do not believe me and look to see when the government implemented the law to say that there had to be so many black politicians. You can see how many politicians switched their race, their culture to black to then therefore be able to run, right? So it gets more complicated. So that was just my 38 minutes of go think for yourself. We all ain't built the same. And then I ain't even get into the woo-woo shit of things, but I digress. Y'all have a fabulous day.